Keep yourself in the loop of everything football on the Golden State Media Concepts Football Podcast. The latest news on and off the field, be it college football, Big Ten, SEC, Big 12, Pac-12, ACC to the NFL. We've got you covered. Listen to the Golden State Media Concepts Football Podcast.
Hello, and thank you for tuning in to the GSMC Football Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I am your host, Andrew DeCino. Now, yes, it is probably your first time hearing me, and I'll be honest, I am honored to be brought into your living room, your bedroom, your headphones, however you may be listening to me. But I am having a fantastic day. I am looking at a gray, cloudy sky, but I have the chance to be talking football, and that's going to get me excited always, okay? So even though the Super Bowl's in our rearview mirror, free agency started last week, football is not slowing down or winding down in any way, shape, or form. No, it is just getting going. So, what's on tap for today? What is Andrew, which is myself, going to be talking to you for about 80 minutes today? Well, the Patriots these past few weeks, since free agency started, have been spending huge money in free agency. What does that mean for their 2021 season and beyond? Well, next we're going to be talking about Deshaun Watson. He's not making headlines for his spectacular plays in Houston or even him trying to force his way out of Houston, and no Jack Easterby story here. No, this is him with allegations of sexual misconduct lawsuits being filed against him. As I am talking, there may even be more filed. The count is up to 16, but that is a huge, huge story. And another huge story, speaking of dollar amounts now, a $113 billion TV deal. The NFL reached an agreement this past week. There's many implications for the 32 clubs, for the TV networks. There's going to be 2 new networks being involved in the Super Bowl rotation. And it also has a lot on the line for us fans at home. Okay, and lastly, and you better stick around for this one, I will give you my top 10 remaining free agents, because a lot of them were swiped up. A lot of them were swiped up by the New England Patriots too. But I'm going to give you my top 10 remaining, where is a good fit, and how are they even still on the open market, okay? Well, let's just jump right into it. I mentioned New England swiping up free agents left and right. And, okay, this is pretty unusual for the New England Patriots because it's always been Bill Belichick's mantra, which is, okay, they love to get veterans near the end of their career who want to start to win because there's the Patriot way, and, you'll be coached hard, but winning is fun. You remember that famous Lane Johnson quote, the Philadelphia Eagle, who said the New England Patriots don't have fun. Patriots respond saying, well, winning's pretty fun. Okay, so the Patriots at the beginning of free agency had $69 million of salary cap, which was the third most in the league. And then over the course of some of the first few days of free agency, New England spent $175 million in guaranteed money. Okay, this is unusual for them. Think back to the last 2 decades for the New England Patriots. They are hagglers when it comes to negotiations. For years, they would have to restructure Danny Amendola's contract, who made maybe $3 million a year. They would lower it. They'd be like, Danny, you know what? Can you take a little bit less money? They'd go to Tom. They'd say, Tom, how about we restructure your deal? We give you a little pay cut so that we have money to sign other players. One of the biggest splashes, even since 2010 was in free agency, Stephon Gilmore coming to town. And I remember that contract was huge because Bill Belichick never spends money. And even if he spends money, it may be for 1 year or so. Think back to 2014. Darrelle Revis comes to town for just a year. Brandon Browner was in town for just a year. But they rarely go out and give guys that aren't their own homegrown guys big contracts. Sure, they've given Dante Hightower, a big contract. That's one of their own guys. Sure, they gave Shaq Mason a big contract, but still, that's one of their own guys. And what we've seen since free agency started, how about I just give a few names? Matthew Judon on defense, plays linebacker. They re-signed Dietrich Wise, a lot of guaranteed money. Jalen Mills, the Eagle. They also brought in Devon Godchaux. He's going to play on the defensive line. Okay, now think about offense. You're bringing the 2 tight ends, Jonnu Smith, Hunter Henry. You got the wide receiver, Kendrick Bourne. Got Nelson Aguilar. There's a lot of signings, both on the offensive and the defensive side of the ball for New England. And so, what do you think of this? And you also bring back guys like Kyle Van Noy. Okay, he was in Miami for a year. David Andrews is back. And many people thought that David Andrews was going to be gone because they had re-signed but they had brought back Ted Karras, who, if you remember, in 2019, when Andrews was injured most of the year, Ted Karras played. Then he got a contract in 2020. He left New England. He's back. So both Van Noy and Ted Karras left for a year. Now they're back. Okay, you bring Trent Brown back too. Okay, he was gone for 2 years, and now he's back. So you're reuniting with a bunch of these guys. You're bringing in a ton of new names, and everyone points to, I think, probably the biggest signings, if you look on the offense side of the ball, the 2 tight ends. You got Jonnu Smith and you got Hunter Henry, all right? And Smith came first. If you go back to the timeline, Smith came first, and, of course, he came from Tennessee, and he does a lot of things over there. They could move him around. I think he played running back and got a couple of carries in a few games. You can flex him out. You can have him in line as a tight end. And then the next morning you see Hunter Henry's coming to town. You're like, okay, now you got your stereotypical big tight end. Okay? So you have 2 tight ends that can do 2 different things. And I'm sure you've heard the comparison before. When was the last time that New England had 2 tight ends that did 2 different things? When you think back to Aaron Hernandez, and Rob Gronkowski. And in 2012, when both of them were able to play together, they had one of the most explosive offenses in the NFL. And I think those 2 combined for maybe 24 touchdowns in a year. I mean, did the New England Patriots tight end group even have 24 catches all of 2020 season? I don't think so. They even had 4 receiving touchdowns all year in 2020. A huge drop-off from anything that the Patriots have seen in years past. Okay, so yes, New England needed to do this. They needed to do something because they had a 7-9 season in 2020. And if we're being honest, how many years of Bill Belichick going 7-9 would the Patriots endure? I think that, yes, Robert Kraft will give Belichick, a free pass for a 7-9 season, but the fans demand more. The Boston fans have been relentless over this team. They went from last year, probably around this time, or maybe in June when Cam Newton was signed by New England. They said, oh yeah, we don't need Tom Brady. We won't skip a beat. We have a former MVP Cam Newton in 2015 that even beat out Tom Brady for MVP that season. Yeah, we don't need Brady, okay? And they're going to say, okay, yeah, we'll go 12-4 again. It's the Patriot way. It's all Belichick. Belichick's going to coach him up. Belichick's going to find a way. And then you go through the season, you're 7-9. You almost have no weapons on the offensive side of the ball. But really, that, if you think about it, and here's another thing that people neglect to realize, that 2020 offensive group, really similar to the 2019 offensive group. Yeah, you got Edelman hurt most of the 2020 season, but Edelman was hurt a lot in 2019 too. He just played through it. And then in 2020, he took the elective knee surgery. So much of the same group offensively was there in 2020 with a lot less production, and the reason was because of the quarterback. So what's the message of all this? You sign Jonnu Smith, you sign Hunter Henry, you sign Nelson Aguilar, you get Kendrick Bourne. But who is playing quarterback for you if you are New England? Because Cam Newton came back. They re-signed Cam Newton. And from what it looks like, the Patriots really like Cam Newton. And yes, you see the numbers and it says, oh, Cam Newton, $14 million, which is a steep increase in salary from what he was getting the previous year, but it's not really $14 million. A lot of that is incentives. I think from what I've read, it's somewhere, $3-4 million in base salary. You can still cut Cam Newton, okay? So if I am the New England Patriots, you made all these moves, Trent Brown, David Andrews, Van Noy, I listed all the rest. You got to get yourself a quarterback. Because having Cam Newton throw pick sixes on screen passes or throwing a ball that's going to be swatted down every single time because of the way that he releases the football, or a ball that's underthrown 10 feet and picked off. There's been absolutely atrocious games played from Cam Newton in the 2020 NFL season. And for some reason, the Patriots are putting up with it. If you think back, there's been stories told about how Bill Belichick treats the team and how he treats Tom Brady back in the day. I think Chad Ochocinco, he was in New England for, a cup of tea. He was in there for just 1 year. And he told a story of the first day he was in New England. Okay, he was there for the 2011 season, the year that New England lost Super Bowl 46 to the New York Football Giants. He says he comes in to the meeting room, and in front of everyone, this is the entire team, they're watching film. And the way the 2010 season ended was a divisional round loss to the New York Jets. And there was a play, I think Tom Brady had thrown an interception on an overthrown screen pass. Ochocinco was saying they turned on that film, and Belichick started chewing out Tom Brady in front of the entire team. And that made Ochocinco realize, wow, if you are chewing out the greatest to ever play, what does that mean for me? And so that was the attitude in New England for the longest time. It was, no one is safe from criticism, not even the star quarterback. And Cam Newton, on the other hand, has been protected, I feel, by Bill Belichick. Reporters ask time and again about Cam Newton's throwing struggles. And on the pick six, I believe this was against the Rams this past season. Cam Newton threw an interception on a screen pass. Bill Belichick was asked about it, and he said, well, what do you want from him? Or what do you want from me? Basically defending him. So Bill Belichick, who has not been shy to throw his former quarterback under the bus or to give him blame before, now defends Cam Newton. So it seems like he likes Cam Newton. So are they going to get a quarterback to make all these free agent moves pay off? They better. Because right now, if you go back into the 2021 season with Cam Newton and Jarrett Stidham, I don't know what you should expect. Because someone has to get Jonnu Smith the football, someone has to get Hunter Henry the football, someone has to get Nelson Aguilar the football, and someone's got to get Kendrick Bourne the football. And it's not going to be Cam Newton, because I am telling you, this guy has had absolute disastrous games. Disastrous. Sure, he's had some good ones, but not many. Not many from this past season. He has had games of QBRs 0, 3. It is beyond me the way that the passing game had looked for New England in 2020. So you need to get a quarterback. And this Trent Brown move sticks out in my head a lot because Trent Brown, as I mentioned, he was in New England in 2018. He won a Super Bowl with the team. Great left tackle. He protected Brady's blind side. Won a Super Bowl with him. Great pass blocking tackle, okay? You know, when you look out offensive linemen, you have to say, how good are they pass blocking? How good are they run blocking? Well, Trent Brown's a big guy. He's got to be like 6'8". He's got gigantic reach, everyone else says. And sure, he may not be the most athletic guy just because of his pure size, but from all indications, he's a great pass blocker. And there have been times when he has gotten beat around the edge, but his reach is just so long, he can just drive the defender past the quarterback and make up for it with his reach. So Trent Brown, that move being brought back, you say to yourself, okay, New England just got themselves a great pass blocking left tackle or even right tackle, because that's what he played in Oakland and Vegas for a few years. So that makes you think, okay, they're getting a guy to protect the quarterback. Maybe they're going to get a guy who can actually throw at the quarterback position. And so then everyone thinks, is Garoppolo going to be coming back in a trade? And that's the way it would have to be. It would have to be a trade. Or are they going to get Marcus Mariota? Or are they going to get Gardner Minshew? Are they going to bring back Jacoby Brissett? Anyone who can throw the football. Right now, the two quarterbacks New England has on their roster, Cam Newton. I already spoke to his throwing fallacies and shortcomings. Jarrett Stidham right now, the other one, he's working out in California with a couple of the new receivers. Okay? And one of the new receivers, I believe this was Kendrick Bourne. He was being interviewed, and he called him Jared Stinney. Stinney. So he doesn't even know his quarterback's name. Doesn't even know his quarterback's name. Okay, so back to the quarterback situation. The Trent Brown move, everyone thought that they were going to bring in a quarterback. With the amount of money that New England has spent so far, are they going to go get a quarterback now? Could they take on a Garoppolo contract? Is Marcus Mariota going to be cheap if you want him? Or are you going to roll with Cam Newton? My guess is, honestly, they're going to roll with Cam Newton. And they're going to say, Cam Newton, another season removed from his shoulder surgery, another season in the system with New England. So we'll get everything on track. Okay, that's one thought. Jarrett Stidham, they didn't even trust him to play more than a handful of quarters last year. I don't think they want him. So now your options are, still trade for Garoppolo, get yourself a Marcus Mariota, get yourself a Jacoby Brissett or a Gardner Minshew, something. Or, at this point, all the free agent moves that New England has made is unprecedented. Are we going to see another unprecedented move by Bill Belichick, which would be sell out some of your picks in the draft, go up and get a quarterback? Because they're sitting at 15 right now. 15th overall in the NFL draft. Well, you're going to have, obviously Trevor Lawrence, Zach Wilson, Trey Lance. Trey Lance, is he going to be off the board? I think indications are saying yes after his pro day. Mac Jones, another great pro day. Happened on Wednesday. Today. So is Mac Jones going to be around at 15? I don't think so. I think New England, if they really want to start to be competitive again. Because take a look at even the AFC East. You got the Bills and the Dolphins, who are a great football team in your division. You're going to have tough competition. Those are 4 tough games every single year. If I'm New England, I move up and I get myself a quarterback early, whether it's Trey Lance or, I think Zach Wilson's probably going to be off the board. They might need to trade up to 2 to get Zach Wilson. Or you get yourself a young guy, a young free agent, a Gardner Minshew, anyone who can get these new playmakers the football. But I'm telling you, if you roll with Cam Newton again, I don't know how getting Hunter Henry prevents Cam Newton from hitting his 6'8" left tackle, Trent Brown, in the back of the head, or throwing another interception on screen pass. It's, they need to get a quarterback if they are going to be competitive in the 2021 season. And so I think they need to go up, get yourself a quarterback in the draft, because guys like Smith and Henry, these aren't one-year deals. They're going to be around for 3-4 years. Even Aguilar and Bourne. These guys, all indications, these guys seem excited to be in New England. Keep them excited. Get yourself a quarterback. All right? And one last note, we can praise New England, and I will praise New England for going out and getting this done. They had to do something in free agency. They were a 7-9 team, and they were on fast track to be another 7-9, or even worse, 6-10 team again. So they had to do something. But is this an indictment on Bill Belichick for his lack of drafting? Because they drafted Devin Asiasi and Dalton Keene, 2 tight ends, failed. Well, no, I'm not going to say failed. Okay, the jury's still out, but it's not looking good because they had almost no production in 2020. So then they go out and buy 2 tight ends in free agency. So you got 4 tight ends on your roster because the 2 you bought are going to make the team, and you have the 2 you drafted. Are you going to cut them? Those were second-round picks. All right, and think about in years past, N'Keal Harry, Sony Michel. Are those good draft picks? Maybe this free agent spending spree is more of an indictment on Bill Belichick, the general manager, player of personnel director, whatever you want to call his role in New England besides just coach. Maybe the shopping spree is an indicator that maybe Belichick kind of messed up drafting these past couple of years. Because he had to go out and buy these players. And it's still not done yet. Needs to get a quarterback. I don't think that if Cam Newton is remaining quarterback, I don't see a drastic improvement. Dante Hightower's getting a year older. Julian Edelman, I don't know if he's even going to be on the team. He's hurt. He's old. Patrick Chung's retired. Thank you, Patrick Chung, for your services. Joe Thuney, he went and signed with Kansas City. Stephon Gilmore, last time I checked, they wanted to trade him. He wanted to be out. But I'm sure you know by now, all these moves, I'm going to say, won't work unless you get the quarterback. Now, speaking of quarterback, next thing we're going to be talking about is Deshaun Watson, the quarterback down in Houston, is making a lot of news, a lot of headway. Maybe not in the best way. Well, definitely not in the best way. We will get to that coming up.
Are you looking for help for your fantasy football team? Check out the GSMC Fantasy Football Podcast. Get today's best advice on who to start, who to sit, even who you should draft. From sleeper picks to red-hot lineups, they got it all covered for you. That's gsmcpodcast.com/fantasy-football-podcast. We'll cover traditional leagues, dynasty, PPR, even IDP leagues. When you need fantasy help, there's just one show to hit up. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit gsmcpodcast.com for more info.
And welcome back. Welcome back from break. Well, we just covered the shopping spree that New England had. By the way, I forgot to mention, they're also bringing back James White. 3 years, 2 years, $3 million each. That's a total of $6 million. We just talked about the monstrous moves New England made and why I think that they won't work. Okay? So, why don't we talk about the quarterback down in Houston, the quarterback that even defeated New England last year, even though he only racked up 4 wins, Deshaun Watson, down in Houston, playing for the Texans as of right now. So, you think about where Deshaun Watson was in terms of the news cycle just a couple of weeks ago. Just even 2 weeks ago, let's say. It was, he wants out of Houston. He doesn't like Nick Caserio. Nick Caserio, by the way, they brought over, the Houston Texans brought him from New England, the former director of player personnel there. They also have Jack Easterby in a very, very elevated role in Houston, which, that is also a confusing situation in its own right. Jack Easterby in 2016 was holding team prayers for the New England Patriots. He was their team chaplain. He was their motivator. He was the encourager. He was the guy giving speeches before, to some of these guys before the game. This is the guy that you have running now, basically the Houston Texans organization. And so you think back a few weeks ago, Deshaun Watson, very unhappy with the situation in Houston. He said, I want, a seat at the table when it comes to choosing our next head coach. And this was before they had hired David Culley, now their head coach in Houston. He said, I want to sit at the table. I want to be able to decide. And that's a tricky situation. If I'm Deshaun Watson, that's a big ask. But if you're Houston, Deshaun Watson's kind of a once-in-a-generational, or, one of those types of quarterbacks. He is phenomenal. He is phenomenal at playing football and phenomenal at playing the quarterback position. So it's a big ask. He was unhappy because apparently they didn't give Eric Bieniemy an interview, and he wanted Eric Bieniemy to get an interview, the offensive coordinator in Kansas City. And then they hired David Culley, and then reports were coming out that Deshaun Watson wasn't answering texts from the owner or calls from the owner or Cal McNair. He was unhappy that they brought in Nick Caserio and Jack Easterby. A lot of things Deshaun Watson is unhappy about. So 2 weeks ago, Deshaun Watson wants out of Houston. He wants to be traded. He wants to be traded to the Jets. He wants to be traded to Miami. All it is he wants out. And the Texans did not have a strong platform to negotiate on, as Deshaun Watson had a no-trade clause in his contract. He could basically say, no, that deal that you just made with, the Rams, don't want it. Don't want it. I want to go to this team, or I'm not going to play. He's a big contract, Deshaun Watson. He has a pretty good amount of power with the Texans, or at least did. Now, what is going on with Deshaun Watson? Because that is on the football side of things, Deshaun Watson wanting out of Houston. Okay? But more recently, every day, or even every hour at this point, since I have been recording, there could be even a new lawsuit. But Deshaun Watson, now the tally is up to 16 cases have been filed against Deshaun Watson alleging sexual misconduct. Now, more into that, apparently these happened during massages. And apparently Watson was alluding to getting sexual favors from his masseuses or explicitly asking. And right now, all they have are these allegations and text messages of Deshaun Watson saying, sorry, I made you uncomfortable. But that's where we are at right now, and I won't get too down the legal path. But what I will say is the attorney for now the 16 cases of sexual misconduct against Deshaun Watson, the attorney is Tony Busby. Okay? And right now the charges are all civil. No criminal charges have been pressed yet. And again, the consensus among the plaintiffs is that Watson, quote unquote, exposed himself or hinted at or specifically asked for sexual services during these massage sessions. And interestingly enough, for the longest time, because this surfaced a week and a half ago, I'd say, Deshaun Watson was silent. Very interesting maneuver with all these allegations coming forward. Because if I'm Deshaun Watson, and, again, we don't know what happened, but obviously Deshaun Watson is going to argue that he did not do this. Why is he being silent? And only as of this past day or so, Deshaun Watson's attorney, Rusty Hardin, finally came out, and they issued a few statements basically saying that, they're trying to say that there's blackmail involved, and that, every other massage therapist that Deshaun has worked with, they, say that he's never engaged in inappropriate conduct, and they describe him as, a gentleman and a model client, outstanding, respectful, compassionate man. That's what Watson's attorney is saying. Obviously, Busby is out there saying something else, as well as the 16 cases filed against Deshaun Watson. Now, just an interesting thing to note, and Pro Football Talk's Mike Florio alluded to this. He is a former attorney. All 16 cases are with Tony Busby, the attorney. No other lawyer has gotten involved. All 16 are through Tony Busby. To the extent that there have been articles coming out saying, is this is someone in Houston behind this? Is this some kind of, witch hunt for Deshaun Watson? It's just interesting to note that all 16 have been filed with Tony Busby. Obviously, we want to get to the bottom of this. If, a lot of implications on the line for Deshaun Watson, but very interesting to note he only issued a statement recently as of the last day or so. And the longer that Deshaun Watson is going with more and more cases being filed against him, the worse off he's going to be in the court of public opinion. How is the dust going to settle for Deshaun Watson? There's a bunch of questions that are going to be raised. A bunch. Because what will Deshaun Watson have to do to clear his name of any wrongdoing? Let's say, none of this is true, which is, that's going to be that, and that's part of it. That's tough because there's 16 cases. How would it be that, I don't want to get into hypothesizing here. You'd have to have all 16, be proven not true. And right now the charges are civil. Okay. So the burden of proof is a lot different from if this was, if these were criminal charges. And I'll get into that in just a moment. But now you think about football. Would a team still trade for this quarterback, Deshaun Watson? How much would he have to clear his name? Because right now we're late March of 2021. Football season is going to start September. Preseason is going to be in August. Training camp is going to be in July. So we're at the end of March. Let's call it early. Like April is around the corner. So would you imagine that these issues would be resolved soon? I don't know. So would a team still trade for Deshaun Watson? You will take on a lot of heat if these cases are not resolved and you trade for Deshaun Watson. Now, another question is, will Deshaun Watson be placed on the paid leave list? Okay? Think back to Ben Roethlisberger. If you have 16 cases against you like Deshaun Watson and the season is approaching, does the NFL want you out there? A lot of times, whether it was Ray Rice or Kareem Hunt or, some of these guys who have Ezekiel Elliott made the news for not good reasons, whether it be criminal charges or you name it. The NFL doesn't want their team to run them out there, for the fans to see them, for the broadcasters to be talking about them, all while there is ongoing, investigations, a lot of negative, let's be honest, this is negative news for Deshaun Watson. So does the NFL place him on the paid leave list? Because they just don't want the fans to be talking about him on the football field. If this is not resolved by September, because right now it's the off season. The NFL doesn't need to do anything right now. But what about when July hits, or what about when August hits? If this is not resolved by then, they might have to do something. And then the other question you might have to ask, what if Deshaun Watson is cut? He did want out of Houston. Could Houston give him his wish now and say, you know what, Deshaun? We're going to part ways. We don't want to be in the news for this any longer. You are cut. And so then, if he's cut, will a team go, swipe him up? Look at, I think, a good example of this. Think about Antonio Brown. Think about how he basically threw a fit in Pittsburgh, got his way out, went to the Raiders, got a lot of guaranteed money, but didn't want to be there. Didn't want to be there to the extent that he is burning his feet in those cryotherapy chambers. If you remember that on Hard Knocks. And then he finds his way out of the Raiders organization and ends up in New England. But all during that time, there were cases of, I believe that another kind of sexual misconduct or sexual harassment against Antonio Brown. The New England Patriots went after him. They said, we'll take you. But as soon as Antonio Brown started not cooperating with the investigation, they said, don't text the plaintiff. He texted. He harassed continuously over text. Patriots cut him. They said, no way. We gave you your one shot. You are done. Could this be a similar situation? Deshaun Watson stays in Houston. And if there is one slip up or one bad stroke by Watson in terms of decision making during this investigation, they just cut him. They part ways. Now, I talked about at the beginning of this segment, Deshaun Watson wanting out of Houston and trying to force his way out. And when you have a no-trade clause, you kind of put your team in an interesting situation in terms of negotiating power. They don't have much because he can basically shoot down any deal that he wants for any reason. It's the way the no-trade clause is. So, the Texans have even less negotiating power now with all this impending with the 16 cases, and it might be more soon. So, bottom line, each day that this goes on, I think it's going to be tougher for Deshaun Watson to clear his name, to move on with his regular quarterback life, to even move on to where we were 2 weeks ago, where it was just him being unhappy in the Houston Texan organization. Now the Houston Texans are upset with him, along with many other people are upset with him too. It's very, very interesting of a situation. I want to know how this is going to unfold over the next couple of weeks, because as this goes on, like I mentioned, the NFL is going to have their hands tied. The Houston Texans are going to have their hands tied. And with all this, think back to, I mentioned it, Ray Rice. The NFL did nothing. And then they had to go clean up their own mess that they made because they did nothing. And then because of that, they were harsher with penalties on some other players. I think most notably, when Tom Brady was accused of Deflategate, which, I don't think he did anything with the footballs, they slapped 4 games on him. 4 games. Because this is right around the time that they were caught busted for not coming down hard on Ray Rice, and everyone was finding out that Roger Goodell had the tape of the elevator and then did nothing. And so then they've been tougher since then. So as the season approaches, the NFL is going to have to do something. The Houston Texans, I don't know if they can do anything besides cut him, because I don't know what they could do for a trade. Obviously, I think someone would trade for him given the right deal, but it basically kills any negotiating power that Houston even had to begin with. So they're not going to trade him at this point, because I don't think anyone's going to be, paying out the door for Watson at this, with all these impending investigations. So Deshaun Watson, the 25-year-old quarterback, spectacular player he is. You remember at the end of last season, J.J. Watt comes up to him. He says, "Sorry for wasting one of your years." He really is good. Most experts, most analysts, myself included, the expert analyst will say Deshaun Watson probably in your top 5 quarterbacks in the NFL. He is a difference maker. In the previous segment, we talked about what New England would need in order to make all their free agency moves pay off. A guy like Deshaun Watson would change that. He would change any team he went to. How about the Jets? There for a while, they were saying maybe he'll go to the Jets. Maybe he wants to go to New York, be in the spotlight. The Jets just got Corey Davis. That's a good receiver. That's a really good wide receiver for Deshaun Watson to be throwing to. He would change that team. Miami was a really good football team last year, and they had a quarterback carousel between Ryan Fitzpatrick and Tua Tagovailoa. And they were good mixing and matching their quarterbacks like a baseball game with a closer and a starting pitcher. And they were great. Imagine putting Deshaun Watson in there. He could change the fortunes of most teams out there in the NFL. For a while, the Bears were in on Watson. Most teams would have given the house. But if I'm Houston, before any of these cases were filed, I probably would have wanted to do anything I can to keep my superstar 25-year-old quarterback, because I would just need to find some pieces for him, make the team a little bit better, and then Houston is competing once again in the AFC South. Think about the AFC South. You got the Colts, you got the Jaguars, you got the Texans, you got the Titans. That's a very winnable division at around 10 games. 10 games, you could probably win the division. Deshaun Watson staying in Houston probably could hit that mark. He would at least be bumping heads with Tennessee and Mike Vrabel. Okay, but now that all these cases are out, I don't know if anyone wants to touch Deshaun Watson until they know for sure what's going on. I don't think we even know what's going on right now. No criminal charges have been filed. The district attorney hasn't prosecuted yet. I don't know, and according to Mike Florio, district attorney won't prosecute until there is more evidence besides a text message of Watson apologizing for making his masseuses feel uncomfortable because then it just turns into what Watson says versus what the plaintiff says. In a criminal case, the burden of proof, like I mentioned, is different. You need beyond a reasonable doubt, and the district attorney probably won't file a criminal charge until they think that they can win a case beyond a reasonable doubt. But that's the latest on Deshaun Watson. He might have to fork over a lot of cash if he settles, or if he's even found guilty. A lot of cash could be exchanged hands. But speaking of a lot of cash, the NFL just came to an agreement on their TV and media deal that entails a gigantic check. That is what we are going to be talking about next. You better stay tuned for that, because there is, speaking of, Watson and the implications with him, there are a lot of implications for you, the fan, and me, the fan, sitting in front of our TV screens at home with this new NFL TV and media deal. That is what we're going to get into in segment 3.
Check out the show that's built on the MMA. From the UFC to extreme cage fighting, they got the fights covered. Check out the GSMC MMA podcast. Get the latest news on past or upcoming fights. Join us as we talk to and about some of the biggest names in the MMA, past, present, and future. When it's the fight game, there's just one show to check out. GSMCpodcast.com/MMA-podcast. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit GSMCpodcast.com for more info.
All right, and we are back. So, we just talked about, for the last 20 minutes, Deshaun Watson and what Houston's going to do with their superstar quarterback that is now on the hot seat. 16 cases filed against him. But there's a lot going on with the NFL, too, because the NFL does not just have their hands full with their players. They now have their hands full with the TV and media deal that was just struck. $113 billion TV deal they just signed. That's a lot. That's pretty big. So what does that mean for us? I think there's a lot of exciting things going on. So Thursday Night Football, for the past couple of years, last year it was on Fox, and the first 3 weeks of the season are usually just the NFL Network. So if you have the NFL Network, good for you, because you were able to watch the first 3 Thursday Night Football games of the year. After that, anyone on Fox can watch it. And so you'd have Joe Buck, Troy Aikman calling those Thursday Night Football games. That was pretty cool. A couple of years prior, it was almost on a rotational basis. I remember going back to even 2015, CBS had some games for Thursday Night Football. I remember Nance and back then it was Phil Simms. They called a few Thursday night games. Then it would rotate over to Fox, and then they would call some games. NFL Network would get some games too, and it would rotate all over the place. I like Thursday Night Football. I really do. I love how the NFL week encompasses Thursday, Sunday, Monday, and in this past COVID season, we would have an occasional Tuesday. We'd have a Wednesday. And obviously we won't have the Tuesdays and Wednesdays anymore moving forward. But I love, basically, it feels like the weekend starts on a Thursday because you're watching football. It's great. I love the Thursday Night Football. So part of the new TV deal that the NFL struck was, instead of Fox hosting these Thursday night games, it will be Amazon Prime. And Amazon Prime paid $1.2 billion per year for 15 Thursday night football games. Obviously, there is no Thursday night football game the last week of the year. And the first week of the year goes to Al, Chris, and Michelle on NBC. So, again, assuming there's going to be 17 games next year. I'll get into that in just a moment, too. Thursday night football gets 15 of them. Okay. $1.2 billion is also double the amount that Fox paid for these games just a year ago. So Amazon Prime is paying out of their minds for this. Now, what does this mean? Okay, so who's going to be broadcasting these Amazon Prime games? There's going to be so many more jobs in the media and in television because of Amazon Prime doing this. They're going to need a whole TV crew. They're going to need the camera crew to the games, the research teams. I think this is fantastic. It's if we're seeing Thursday night football games on Amazon Prime, imagine what we'll be looking at in 2031, another 10 years from now. Because this is Amazon. This is a platform that you can, buy literally anything you can think of. I just tried to think of an example in my head of what you can buy on Amazon, and I thought, why even do that? Because you literally can get anything on Amazon, anything, and now you're going to be watching your Thursday night football games on Amazon Prime, that is. So it's kind of crazy that transition that the NFL is making into, moving away a little bit from some of the prime networks like Fox or CBS or NBC, ESPN. So, also, since it's on Amazon Prime, if you don't have it, you better get it. Maybe before they raise the price of Amazon Prime too. Because Amazon Prime is a subscription service. You're going to need to pay, whatever, $12, $13 a month, I think, to be able to watch Thursday Night Football now. Otherwise, you're just not going to watch it. So, Amazon is going to be reaping the benefits there. I mentioned that they're going to get 15 Thursday Night Football games because 2 others are NBC, and then there's no Thursday Night Football game the last week of the year. I am saying there are going to be 17 games this season because this is now beginning, if you think back to the collective bargaining agreement that came to a deal back in this past summer, collective bargaining agreement, which, by the way, they are keeping in place. There was an option for the NFL to roll out 17 games either this year or the following year. And so all indications are pointing towards we are going to be having 17 games moving forward. Now, the NFL schedule is very, it follows arithmetic, it follows math. If you are, let's say, the division winner of the AFC East, you play the 3 other division winners in the AFC. You also play an entire division in the AFC, such as the AFC North. So now you have 3 of the division winners because you play the other winners. You play the same seed as that you finished. Then you also play 3 more, let's say, in the AFC North, because there would be a repeat. Obviously, someone wins the AFC North. So now you're up to 6 games. You obviously have your 6 interdivisional games, 2 each. So now you're at 12. And then you play an out-of-conference division. Let's say the NFC West. So you play 4 of those teams. That's your 16 right there. Where's the 17th game going to be? That's going to be fun. That's going to be fun to decide. I don't think they have decided how they're going to allocate the 17th game, but I could imagine they have a lot of flexibility with what they want to do. Could you imagine they make some kind of rivalry game? Think about this for a second, and I don't want to stick on too much Patriot talk. But the Patriots-Seahawks games happen once every 4 years. And every time we've seen them, they've been awesome. 2012 was the Richard Sherman, "You mad, bro?" game to Tom Brady, where it comes up after, says that. 2014, obviously, was the Super Bowl. Malcolm Butler's game-saving goal line interception. Spectacular game. Spectacular game all around. Then you go to 2016, a game in New England on Sunday night, and it came down to the wire. It was 4 or 5 lead changes in the fourth quarter. And this was, this was Tom Brady coming off suspension season. And the game came down to a goal line fade to Rob Gronkowski, where there's tangled feet, arms with Cam Chancellor. Was there a flag? Was there not a flag? Came down to it. And then 2020, this past season, it came down to another goal line stand. Cam Newton running and being tripped up, couldn't even reach the goal line, and the game ends. All these close one-possession goal line stands, signature Richard Sherman moments. Wouldn't that be a fun game if you could say, all right, let's think of these rivalry games. Let's have Seattle and New England go at it again for our 17th game of the year. Obviously, it doesn't need to be played week 18. It would just be part of the mixture of 17 games. Teams that just don't meet each other a lot. Or even if you want to reduce travel, have the Jets and Giants play each other. That could be fun. You have that in the preseason. The Jets and Giants, the MetLife Bowl. Those could be fun games. Rivalry games. Or throwback games. Or even the 17th game. What if, the first and second seed in your division, let's say it's the Bills and the Dolphins, they'll always be neck and neck. Give them third game, a rubber match game, because, if they don't sweep, then you'll need a rubber match game. I think those could be a lot of fun games. They have a lot of wiggle room for the 17th game. What is it going to be? Okay, and obviously with 17 games, they're cutting a preseason game. So there will be 3 preseason games, 17 games, a total of 20 games before we reach the postseason. Now, another thing that is really interesting about this TV deal, CBS and Fox. If you haven't been aware, CBS usually gets the AFC games, and Fox gets the NFC games. And so the way it worked for the most part was that the road team, if they're AFC or NFC, that would determine who broadcasts the game. Let's say a road AFC team was visiting anyone. It doesn't matter. If it's a road AFC team, CBS is going to have it. If it's a road NFC team, Fox is going to have it. And that's the way it was for all 256 regular season games. Obviously with a few exceptions, if there's a flexed game here or there. But in 2023, according to this new TV deal, the league is going to stray away from that. They're going to, have a completely different schedule of broadcasting games, which I think is going to be incredibly interesting, because think about what games are you more interested to see right now, if we're being honest? AFC games or NFC games? Personally, think about the AFC. You got Josh Allen and the Bills. They're really, really good. You have the Dolphins. They're going to be good. Everyone always will want to see the Patriots. What's going down in the AFC West? You got the Chiefs. People love Mahomes. People love the Chiefs. Justin Herbert and the Chargers. They're going to get good. Okay? What's going on in the AFC North? You still got Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh's going to be there, I think. Ben Roethlisberger's back. Okay, obviously, I don't think until 2023, but Pittsburgh, they usually can scrounge together a good team. Baltimore, Lamar Jackson's going nowhere. Cleveland, Baker Mayfield was awesome, and the Browns were awesome last year. The Cincinnati Bengals, okay, they were in the dump a few years ago, but now they have their guy. That's Joe Burrow. Then you go to the South. Obviously, we just talked about Deshaun Watson, but he's there with Houston. Tennessee Titans are a really good football team. Obviously, they may not have the premier players, but they're a really good football team. Got the Jaguars, yeah. Okay, but think about all the premier talent and good teams in the AFC that you want to see. Now you go to the NFC. Got down south, the Buccaneers. They just won the Super Bowl. Okay, but yeah, Brady is going to be approaching 44 on August 3rd. So he will be 44 by the time this season starts. Now, obviously, I'm the biggest Brady supporter, and I think he can play as long as he wants till 50. But if, we're talking about business negotiations and TV deals and contracts, it would kick into effect in 2023, the new structure of broadcasting scheduling. Brady will be going on 46 at the start of that season. When he plays that season, I will say when he plays because I have no basis in saying that he will stop playing other than saying, well, he'll be 46, so he'll be old. That's great. He'll be old, but he'll keep playing. No indication shows he's slowing down. But you got Saints, Drew Brees retiring. So where's nothing going on there? Are people tuning into Matt Ryan and the Falcons? Or is Daniel Jones as exciting as, some of these other AFC quarterbacks? Are people tuning in to, watch Jared Goff in Detroit? Even the Rams just made a move for Matthew Stafford, but is Matthew Stafford nearly as exciting as Patrick Mahomes or Baker Mayfield? I'd rather watch Mahomes, Mayfield. I'd even watch Joe Burrow instead of Matthew Stafford, and that's the guy they just traded for. Now, obviously, you got Russell Wilson over in the NFC in Seattle. But you got Dak Prescott. He just got his money too. But Dak Prescott's, he's exciting. Okay, he's on America's team, but we're talking about maybe 3-4 guys in the NFC versus 8-9 that I can name in the AFC. So go figure they're redoing these deals because CBS probably didn't want to change this deal. I bet you Fox was saying, why are we stuck having to do, a Lions, Falcons game right now? That's boring. And yeah, I didn't mention Aaron Rodgers. And I'm sure I missed out on a few others, but you get the gist. Double the talent in the AFC in terms of exciting players to watch. CBS, I'm sure, wanted to keep that deal. Fox was like, why are we stuck broadcasting some of these boring games that people don't want to tune into? So no wonder. No wonder. Talking more about networks. Super Bowl mix. Usually goes CBS. Then we have NBC. And we have Fox. Those were the three. Those were the big three that would alternate. In fact, this was supposed to be NBC's year. The Brady Super Bowl was supposed to be on NBC. Bucks, Chiefs, NBC. But they switched with CBS because they wanted to have their Super Bowl broadcast during their Olympic year because the Olympics were pushed to this year. So they wanted to have Olympics and their Super Bowl fall in the same year so they could, I guess, have mega marketing and, push all of that all at once. I don't blame them. But now you're adding two more networks into the fold. ESPN is going to get a Super Bowl, and ABC will get the Super Bowl too. So all these TV deals, they're locked through the 2033 season. So NBC will get 2021, that's next year, 2025, 2029, 2033, last year before the deal. It has to get renegotiated again. CBS will have 2023, 2027, 2031. Fox will have 2022, 2024, 2028, 2032. And then ESPN and ABC will have the Super Bowl after 2026 and 2030. I know I just named a lot of numbers at you, okay? A lot of years. But I think this is interesting because ESPN has gotten a lot of flack for their horrible Monday Night Football broadcasts and their lack of good broadcasters and how it's no longer the allure of Monday Night Football, you know, when Tony Dorsett was running 99 yards and a half. You know, this is not even your Mike Tirico, John Gruden days of Monday Night Football. This is, you know, your Joe Tessitore or whoever is doing it now. This is not as interesting. People don't like this as much. So is ESPN going to get their act together and get a good slate of broadcasters for the Super Bowl? Because I'm telling you, there would be some upset people if they did not have good broadcasters for a Super Bowl. People get upset when Buck and Aikman sometimes call the game. I'm not the biggest Buck and Aikman fan, but they are professionals and they are good. All right? And then Goodell also mentioning that we're going to find a way. He says, quote, we're going to find ways to engage fans through legalized sports betting. Could you imagine over the next few years there being screens in front of your seat if you're at the NFL game and you can start betting live at the game? Would that not be pretty cool? I think that would be. Legalized sports betting, it's happening. It is in our future. And, you know, we're talking about a lot of money here, $113 billion TV deal. That's a lot of money right there, the legalized sports betting realm. That's going to be a lot of fun. And I can't wait for that to happen. And then we'll be able to talk betting together and how to make some money. Okay, so yeah, a lot on the line with this new TV deal. I get excited over the broadcast. I love myself some Al, Chris, and Michelle on NBC. I love myself some Nance and Romo on CBS. Obviously, I don't like Buck and Aikman as much, but I love it. A lot of money on the line. And there's a lot of marquee free agents on the line ready to pick up their phone line out there. That's going to be in the next final segment. We're going to be giving my top 10 remaining free agents out there on the market. There's a lot of... So New England snagged up a lot of good ones. We talked about that in segment 1. There's a lot still left. There is a lot still left. And you're going to get my ranking. You better stick around for that. You better. After the break.
Check out the show built around the women of MMA. From the UFC to the extreme cage fighting, we got the fights covered.
Listen.
It's the Golden State Media Concepts Women's MMA Podcast. The latest news of upcoming fights, discussions of previous matches. Join us as we talk to and about the biggest names in women's mixed martial arts. Past, present, and future. When it's the women's fight game, you know where to listen to. The Golden State Media Concepts Women's MMA Podcast.
All right, and welcome back. You've been with us for just over an hour and 5 minutes so far. And we've covered a lot. We started off in New England What is Bill Belichick doing? What's Bill Belichick, the GM, got up his sleeve? We then talked about Deshaun Watson and what's going on with him in Houston. A lot going on with him in Houston. And then we also just talked about last segment. Some of my inner fanboy might have came out talking about some of the broadcasts, some of the new NFL TV deal, $113 billion, that's billion with a B on the line, that the NFL just negotiated, and what that means for us here at home. Now, there are still a few NFL players who are sitting at home. Maybe they're listening to this too. There's still some NFL players sitting at home without a team, and they deserve one, and they will get one. Now, I'm going to give you my list of some of the top free agents still out there. Now, granted, by the time you've listened to this, some of these guys may have been snagged up, but that's okay. I'm going to start with this. And before I get into this, by the way, I just want to say, free agency is awesome. Okay, part of my favorite part of free agency, yeah, you got the big names going on the move. You get, Levante David being signed, or you got Corey Davis on the move, and, this and that. Juju Smith-Schuster back to Pittsburgh for a discount. Okay, you got a lot of big names out there. Some of the funniest parts of free agency is when you have, something that just does not fit right at all. Like, remember those years when New England brought Reggie Wayne in for a preseason and he absolutely hated it? Or Demaryius Thomas? Or Tim Tebow? Free agency is great because you get a lot of guys who will show up to these off-season camps and preseason that are just like misfits. Like these journeymen that have been on, maybe one team all their life, like Reggie Wayne. And then he's, somewhere else. Or Demaryius Thomas, who made his name in Denver, and then he comes over for a hot second and does absolutely nothing. But I'm excited to see who this year's misfit will be. But let's get it right into the list. Clocking in at 10 on my free agency tracker is Danny Amendola. Okay? He is 35 years old. And he has been in Miami. He's been in Detroit ever since he left New England. Yes, he made his name in New England. He got the name Danny Playoff Amendola for his production in the playoffs, obviously. And for a while, I believe, in 2017, over that New England made the playoffs every single year, right? 2013, 14, 15, 16, 17. Those were Amendola's years in New England. He had more playoff receptions than Rob Gronkowski. So he steps up in the clutch. He's a guy that's going to be running out of the slot. He'll pick up your big third down for you. And for all the injury history he had in the beginning of his career, I think he's been as productive and as, tough as they come over the last few years. So, listen, he's not going to be getting 100 targets like he did in New England, but he catches passes. He's not going to drop them for you. He is going to be used for you in your slot. Now, maybe he won't be your premier slot guy, but could he potentially come in on third downs or on obvious passing downs? And, you're spreading everyone out. You got 3 wide receivers in your set. You're running 11 personnel. You have Danny Amendola in there. So, yeah, his production has declined, but I still like Danny Amendola. I think any team that's looking for a slot quick guy would like Danny Amendola. Maybe and we'll get to this guy maybe a little later, potentially, what if Tampa Bay can't re-sign Antonio Brown? Antonio Brown loves running from the slot. So does Danny Amendola. Danny Amendola clocks in at 10 on my list. Next, Le'Veon Bell. So we have some of the old heads here. Le'Veon Bell was one of the best running backs in the NFL a few years ago. But that his time has come and gone in terms of being the best back. Okay, that's going to go to some of the other guys, whether it's Alvin Kamara, Christian McCaffrey. But I think Le'Veon Bell is still good. We saw him in Kansas City last year. Kansas City's got some good running backs. They obviously have the guy they love, Clyde Edwards-Helaire. They have playoff Damian coming back, as Joe Buck once termed him. So they have their running backs. He's a free agent. Le'Veon Bell, that is. I don't see Kansas City bringing him back. But Le'Veon Bell still has that unique running style where he kind of hovers behind the line of scrimmage, waits for blocks, his lineman to block, and then he kind of scoots ahead. He's not like a get the ball and attack the hole kind of guy, as you know. But listen, I still think Le'Veon Bell, he is big, he is physical, he catches the ball really well out of the backfield, and he runs the ball very well. I think it could be beneficial just to bring him in and see what he's got. Okay, what if you're Buffalo? Buffalo, their running back situation is interesting because you got Devin Singletary, you have Zach Moss, and I think they like Moss, but I don't know what the verdict is on Singletary. Bring in Le'Veon Bell, see what he can do for you. See what he can do for that football team. I think getting backs that can run it and catch it equally as well, very, very useful. Because you see guys all the time who can just catch it. Like, I love James White, but sorry, James White's the type of guy that you have on your team because he catches it. Then you have guys like LeGarrette Blount back in his heyday. Derrick Henry. Yeah, Derrick Henry catches screens, but he's on that football team because he's going to run downhill and he's going to make you pay for hitting you. But then there's these intermediate guys like Dion Lewis, who is spectacular between the tackles, I still think. And then he can catch it and make you pay too. Le'Veon Bell, I think he's going to be really interesting to see where he goes. Next on my list, A.J. Bouye. Another guy, similar to Bell, who is still a few years removed from his best seasons. But if you remember back to 2016, he was on Houston. Houston had one of the best pass defenses in the league in 2016. A.J. Bouye was a part of that defense. 2017, he was a part of the Jacksonville Jaguars. Guess who had one of the best, I think, the best pass defense in the NFL in 2017? That was the Jacksonville Jaguars. They even went to the AFC Championship game that year. So A.J. Bouye, really good defensive back, really good corner. Okay? He is great man-to-man on the outside. And I think there is a lot of upside with bringing A.J. Bouye into town. There are teams that struggle to run man-to-man because they don't think they have the personnel that can go. But I think because of his physicality, which he does have, his makeup, his skill, and being on these top defenses for several years is going to be really, really, I think he's a value for a team. But to what team? That's a good question. Again, look to some of these zone coverage teams. What if, you reunite him with Jalen Ramsey on the Rams? Him and Ramsey play together in Jacksonville. I could like it there. If New England trades Stephon Gilmore, maybe A.J. Bouye fits in right there. But listen, I don't think Bouye is a guy you need to pay a ton of money to. I think at this point he's trying to prove that he is still 2016, 2017 A.J. Bouye. Let's get to next on the list, Larry Fitzgerald. I know I'm coming at you with some of these older guys here, maybe some of the guys that had a big name back in the day. But Larry Fitzgerald, he's one of the best to ever do it. He's one of the greatest performers ever. I don't know if he's still on this streak. I don't think he is, but there is a time when I think he had like 200 or 250 consecutive games of at least catching one pass. Larry Fitzgerald doesn't drop balls. We talked about Danny Amendola at the beginning. He doesn't drop balls. Larry Fitzgerald can go to your team. is smart enough to find soft spots in the defense, is athletic enough to still beat defenders. Maybe not your top defender, but Larry Fitzgerald's not coming to your team but to be your number one receiver. Larry Fitzgerald is coming to your team to catch a few balls, to help some of the younger receivers. I could really like him in, maybe in Denver. They have some of the younger receivers there. They got Jerry Jeudy. He'd love to learn from Larry Fitzgerald. They have KJ Hamler there. Love to learn from Larry Fitzgerald. Minor role for Fitzgerald, such as the one I described for Amendola. But he deserves a spot somewhere. Next on my list, we have Melvin Ingram. You think of Melvin Ingram, you think of Joey Bosa. That pass rushing tandem. And the defensive front with the Chargers. Melvin Ingram, a little bit older, but he can still play really well. He is productive at pass rushing. Okay, but he's not going to be the guy that you just send out there no matter who it is and say, get to the quarterback. That is your Joey Bosa, and that is your TJ Watt. Melvin Ingram is a guy that you want to have paired with one of these upper echelon pass rushers. Think about Denver back in the day with, with Ware and Von Miller attacking you from both sides. Get Ingram with another good pass rusher, and then you could be feared. Then Ingram's productivity will go up. Okay? Yeah, he's had some injuries to deal with, but I think that Melvin Ingram still got some back in the tank. Joey Bosa is the highest paid defensive player in the NFL history. So, do the Chargers have the capability of re-signing Ingram? I don't know. I don't think so. But I think Melvin Ingram could be of a lot of use to a lot of teams out there looking for a good, not great pass rusher. Now, if you're looking for a good, not great cornerback, look no further than Malcolm Butler. Malcolm Butler, he had his best year since 2016 last year. He was ranked 15th in the NFL in terms of play by defensive backs. That's according to Pro Football Focus. Yeah, he's not going to be your A.J. Boye. He's not going to be even your Jalen Ramsey or your Stephon Gilmore or anyone like that. But he's a pretty good number 2 corner. He is. Malcolm Butler, his nickname was Scrap when he came into the league in 2014. Make scrappy plays. Could you want that as your number 2 corner? I would. I want my number 1 corner to be lockdown and my number 2 corner to make plays. To make scrappy plays like that. Yeah, he might get beat, but he's going to be chasing you down and he's going to try and make a play for you. I like Malcolm Butler a lot. I think he's still got some too. Now, on my list above, I had Melvin Ingram. Good pass rusher. Who's going to stop these pass rushers? Well, that's none other than next on my list, Alejandro Villanueva. We see how important pass rush is. Look no further than Super Bowl 55 when Patrick Mahomes was running for his life. Now, Kansas City recently signed Joe Thuney, guard from New England, to help shore that up. But they also cut Mitchell Schwartz, and I believe they parted ways with Eric Fisher as well. So, there are teams, yeah, you need to be able to rush the passer, but you need to be able to protect your quarterback. Tom Brady won the Super Bowl because he was getting the ball out quick and he was being protected. You got to protect the quarterback, and your quarterback will have success. Alejandro Villanueva is one of those middle to upper level offensive linemen. I think he could be really good. His leadership that he has, he was in the military as well. I really like him. I think he's awesome. But speaking of guys blocking pass rushers, let's get to another pass rusher. Next on my list is Jadeveon Clowney. Okay, Clowney is one of the best run stuffers in the league because everyone always thinks of him as a pass rusher, okay? He's actually a better run stuffer than he is a pass rusher. According to Pro Football Focus, he's in the 95th percentile as a run defender and 77th percentile as a pass rusher since entering the league. So Clowney, I think, could provide a lot of use, similar to Ingram, whereas Ingram, I think, is more tailored to be a pass rusher. Clowney, he could help you pass rush, but I think he could also help you stuff the run too. Honestly, Buffalo had a lot of issues stuffing the run, but they paid a lot of money for their defensive line. Could Clowney be there? Because he could generate enough pass rush for you, and he could stop the run too. New England had trouble stuffing the run, but they also just signed Matthew Judon. A couple other teams out there that would love to have Clowney. But again, what's his big bugaboo? The injury. He's not going to be paid a ton, and he's not going to get a lot of guaranteed money, and he's not going to get a lot of years. We've been alternating pass rusher, offensive lineman, pass rusher, offensive lineman. Let's go to Mitchell Schwartz. Similar to Villanueva. Really good offensive lineman. He's been spectacular. He's coming off a back injury, though, which, I'm sure as a lineman, that's a little bit scary to some teams. Okay? But he's been one of the best tackles in this game. His lack of presence for being healthy for Kansas City is probably what Kansas City's downfall was. Patrick Mahomes wasn't able to be protected. Schwartz was hurt. Okay? So if Schwartz is healthy, I think he's one of those guys you plug in at tackle and your team just improves. Next and final on my list is Antonio Brown. Antonio Brown, the 32-year-old Antonio Brown, who, like I mentioned earlier on this episode, he had some issues in Pittsburgh. He had some issues with the Raiders, and he had some issues with New England. But it looks like he found his home in Tampa Bay because he played the final 9 games of the year. And if you remember, he came to Tampa Bay, and then they went on that horrible stretch of November where they almost could not win a football game. But then week 12 hit, and they clicked. Antonio Brown helped that football team. Antonio Brown caught a touchdown in the Super Bowl. Antonio Brown is a player that you need to have eyes on. If you're a defense, you can't just say, "Oh, we'll worry about Antonio Brown later." No. Antonio Brown will still beat you. He is still really good. You watch the way his feet move, the way that he can get in and out of cuts. He spun around Tyrann Mathieu at the goal line right before the first half ended in the Super Bowl 55. Okay? So yeah, Antonio Brown's not the Antonio Brown that we saw in Pittsburgh where he would be putting up consistently 115 catch seasons and 1,500 yards, but he had 45 catches and he had 8 missed tackles forced in 2020. Okay? 17.8% missed tackle rate from Antonio Brown. Highest since his rookie season. I think Brown is still one of the NFL's best. He is one of the best receivers in the NFL. He is my top free agent. And that's my top 10. I think Tampa Bay should get him back. You got Evans, you got Godwin. Okay, sure. But Antonio Brown is really, really useful. So just to recap my top 10, we had Danny Amendola at 10, Le'Veon Bell at 9, A.J. Bouye 8, Larry Fitzgerald 7, Melvin Ingram 6, Malcolm Butler 5, Alejandro Villanueva 4, Jadeveon Clowney 3, Mitchell Schwartz 2, Antonio Brown 1. That is my top 10, folks. That is it. Well, I hope you enjoyed my top 10. I hope that you take my expert knowledge as fact and not just opinion. And I do hope you enjoyed hanging around these last 85 minutes or so with me. I really enjoyed it. I love talking into a microphone that's transmitted to your ears. And I love talking about football. And believe me, this is just the start of the offseason. There's going to be a lot more to go. I can't wait for this to continue. I can't wait to see how the next few weeks will unfold. And I hope you enjoyed. I hope you enjoyed a little NFL talk today. So, without further ado, thank you for listening to the GSMC Football Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I would like to ask that you please remember to subscribe to the show and write a nice review that really helps us. Also, if you can please follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, that would be fantastic. Thank you so much, and have a wonderful rest of your day.
You've been listening to the Golden State Media Concepts Football Podcast, part of the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. You can find this show and others like it at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Download our podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, and Google Play. Just type in GSMC to find all the shows from the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network, from movies to music, from sports to entertainment, and even weird news. You can also follow us on Twitter and on Facebook. Thank you, and we hope you have enjoyed today's program.